Man, this boy has grown up in front of my eyes. Josh Peck, he is an actor, voiceover guy, but now he's entered the Dave Meltzer realm. He's a social media superstar, YouTuber. Obviously, the world has changed. Welcome to the Playbook, Josh.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I was so excited to meet with you because I've been around a lot of child superstars like yourself. And you've had a great influence on my kids, on my staff. They all have their stories. My kids were begging for a jacuzzi in their bedroom. I never knew why.
Sure.
Thank you, by the way. But more importantly, it's difficult to reinvent yourself when you're too successful at a young age. And I think this is true as an entrepreneur. You're seen as a certain way, and that can contribute to a lot of emptiness, a lot of imposter syndrome, things that happen to entrepreneurs and actors when they're hugely successful at a young age, because you're growing and everyone just sees, if you're Ron Howard, they see Opie.
Sure.
And meanwhile, or Henry Winkler's on our show, they see the Fonz, and you can't get away from that. Do you see that the transition from traditional media, which you're a superstar at, into the social media realm assisted in reengineering people's branding or self-perception of you?
I think naturally you kind of have to make your peace with this idea that people marry themselves to you, to the first image they fall in love with. And you can't choose what becomes part of the zeitgeist, like what triggers people's minds to hopefully fall in love with you, which is a great sort of honor. And where would we be without it? I say in my book, you can't pick your hits. That's why Billy Joel won't do Uptown Girl anymore.
Right.
Because, it's to someone who created it, I can imagine night after night, you're like, oh, enough already. But to the people, they're like, oh, this brings up all the memories I had at that time when I was watching you on, for me, Drake and Josh. So in some ways I had to make my peace with it. And then in other ways I had to double down on what I knew was within my control, which was that I loved creating. I've loved acting since as far back as I can remember. And now I'm able to just do that in different forms, be it on Instagram, YouTube, and TV and movies. It doesn't really matter the outlet. I'm able to adapt to whatever format. And I think that's what's aided me in allowing me to stay relevant at a time where it would have been easy to just sort of fade away.
It's so interesting that we're born with an energetic or genetic frequency, an inheritance that's quantum in our nature. And very few of us at a young age are able to act upon, no pun intended, their innate quantum memory or their innate quantum feelings. And when I meet certain athletes that started playing golf at 4, or certain young actors that had not only this innate feeling, but it aligned with their skills and their knowledge as well. And because not everyone can act. I remember Brad Pitt sitting on Letterman, and Letterman's like, oh, you're just so lucky because you're so good looking. That's why you're a successful actor. And he looked at David Letterman and said, you know how many good looking people there are? I'm a great actor, right?
Good for him.
And so are you. You're a great actor. You have
Thanks.
great skills and knowledge. But what do you do if you have this passion, but you don't have necessarily either the availability? So your parents are there at 8 years old going, no, you're going to be a doctor, a lawyer, or a failure. This acting thing isn't for you.
Sure.
But you knew it was. Or 2, you have this feeling like me when I was young, I want to be a professional football player, but I don't have the skills or knowledge. My potential was an average Division III college football player.
Okay.
But which was fine. My parents, at least semi-supported it.
Division III, baby.
Right, exactly.
We love it.
But what do kids do that have either the innate feeling and no availability, or they have the innate feeling and not that much talent?
Well, I think it's hard to disseminate at that age. I mean, I had a very specific sort of set of circumstance. I was, 9 years old. I say in my book, like, funny people are usually funny for very unfunny reasons. Like,
That's a great statement.
Thank you. Like, I was this only child, single mom. We dealt with a lot of financial insecurity. I was overweight. So for me, I felt like I walked into a room at a disadvantage because I assumed people made a snap judgment about me for being overweight, that I was...
You're poor and overweight.
Yeah.
And that's not easy as a 9-year-old.
Totally.
Yeah.
And in many situations you can fake good. You can present a different sort of exterior than what's going on inside. But when you're overweight, you can't do that. You can't hide it. And so I developed this ability in which to sort of take over a room and be funny. And I had learned it from my mom, but I honed it myself because I knew that otherwise I would constantly be playing catch up. And so that, along with the fact that my mom and I were like this scrappy startup instead of a traditional family, when I got an opportunity to move out to California and star in a TV show, we were able to make that leap because we knew that we weren't uprooting both parents' jobs and a bunch of other siblings, right? It was just her and I. We could give it a chance. And my mom always says, she's like, I didn't know you'd be successful. I knew it gave you confidence and that you felt good about yourself. And it wasn't coming in the form of Little League, let's be honest.
Right.
So when I saw that you were good at this thing and you got a lot of great feedback, I wanted to support you. And I would have done it had it been academics or an instrument or what have you.
Or baseball.
Or baseball.
Right.
You know, I played 1 year. It wasn't great. I was more into it for the orange slices and Capri Sun.
Well, it's so resonating. I grew up with 6 kids and a single mom. And her way out for us was education. So it was doctor, lawyer, failure. The fetus wasn't fully developed till after graduate school.
Sure.
And I was the only one of the 5 siblings not to go to the Ivy Leagues and not to follow that direction because of the financial security. I just wanted to buy her a house and a car.
Wow.
But it was interesting. You know, unfortunately, I was even abused as a 9-year-old, which made me the funny guy because all the pain. I get choked up talking about it now. But I never, until you stated, you know, that feeling of financial insecurity, like the snapshot of walking in a room and thinking in my head, everybody knows I'm the poorest guy in the room.
Right.
And so I'd project through either humor or lying, you know, who I was.
Sure.
Which
I
took
did a
me
fair
years.
amount of lying, I think, too, probably.
Yeah.
Just creating fantasy worlds.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So here you go, and you have pretty much instant success because by the time you're 10, you're on shows, you know, variety shows and, you know, big shows, and you are the star of Nickelodeon as you're growing up. What are some of the unseen pressures? You know, I was a multimillionaire in my 20s.
Wow.
And everybody wanted to be me. Right. And,
Sure.
and I know you know what that feels like when all of your peers and friends and parents, they're like, oh, you know, Josh. But there's this reality that you're still just a person with the same problems and challenges. How did you deal with that success with people's now higher expectation of you, a higher snapshot of you, and you have to live at your own reality? Was there some depression or anxiety or any types of manifestations that you find now at 35?
Well, I think the biggest part is that being on Nickelodeon at that time and when I was at sort of the apex of Drake and Josh, it's a bit of a misnomer that it was some gigantic hit because it really wasn't. It's a testament to the show that it's only grown over the last 15 years. Plus, you know, there's no residuals in kids TV, so they rerun it at nauseum. And
that helps you actually.
Yeah, shout out that after contract, and I'm fine. I'm over it. And so
there's the reality.
So you know, it's only gained steam, and I think it's so memeable, and there's so many quotable lines that it's now generationally. You know, there have been 3 sets of like, you know, preteens to teenagers who've been able to embrace the show. So I would almost argue it's bigger now than it was when we were shooting it. And I think like when we finished, the reality was, you know, we didn't make a big amount of money because there just wasn't that in kids TV. It wasn't like being on Modern Family or some huge network show. And there was certainly, while it was this wonderful experience doing my favorite kind of comedy and getting to be on a show that I dreamed of, because, you know, kids television was sort of the holy grail at that time. But there was certainly a stigma that you had to overcome. You know, you were 19 now, and people assumed that because you were cute or you had a little bit, you were sort of an anomaly to have that much sort of, to be that precocious at that age. But now you were entering the realms of like real actors, and it was a gigantic pool. And sometimes you almost had to overcome what producers thought of you because you were sort of that standard cookie cutter kid actor image. So I think that was challenging. And also, again, being overweight at that time, I was introducing myself to the world in a body that I wasn't comfortable in. And so over 2 years of Drake and Josh, I lost over 100 pounds. And while most people were incredible and couldn't have been more lovely and sort of encouraging,
Supported,
there were certainly people who felt like I had taken away from them someone they had fallen in love with. Their favorite character who wasn't threatening to them because he was just big and funny and lovable. And we love a big, funny guy. And so I had to endure some comments and some energies that I wasn't expecting, all in the effort to just feel more comfortable and be able to play more roles.
And you've done a great job in that transition and transformation, because it's not easy. As I mentioned, some of my good friends have faced very similar things. Now, one of the ideas that I have that I think you exemplify is what I call the stage theory. And what happens today in the world of the influencer is that everyone thinks that YouTube or Instagram or TikTok is the holy grail. And I try, through my branding and marketing experience over 35 years now, to say, look, the best place you can be, in my opinion, is on TV. And I'll tell you why. Is I think that whether or not they watch you on TV, the ability to capture yourself on a TV program, a credible one, amplify it onto all of these other platforms, modify it correctly to those platforms, and perpetuate it now in your own capacity on those platforms, has an exponential value than just being on TikTok. So if I go ahead and I star in my own TV show on Amazon Prime or Apple or Bloomberg, I find that taking the content of me being on Bloomberg and then putting it on the social media has 10 to 100 times the impact than me just being on there. Same as a billboard or a newspaper. I took an American Airlines feature they did on me, which was like a bucket list item. I was so proud of myself. But then COVID hits, nobody's flying. So what do? I start making fun of myself and my ego, saying, can you believe this? I thought this was the holy grail.
Right.
And nobody's even seeing it. But because I had a picture in the American Airlines magazine and it went on the social media, now it had more power.
Yes.
I see that with you, that you have so much more credibility on the social media platforms because you are a legitimate actor who has credibility in still traditional media, which still gets millions and millions of people watching.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. I mean, certainly movies and television, because we're still sort of in the depths of traditional media, and each new generation, I mean, you said you have an 11-year-old, I have a 3-year-old son. It's like, to them, like, I don't know necessarily whether my 3-year-old sees a distinction between, Sesame Street, which is now on HBO, crazy, it was on PBS when we were kids, Sesame Street, or Blippi, who's his favorite, YouTube star, who, by the way, sold his company for pretty sure like 9 figures, no big deal. I'm like, I think I picked the wrong profession, or I should have stuck with kids TV. But inevitably, I think, traditional TV and movies, what it does now is it's sort of like someone vouching for you. It's like Goodfellas, right? He's a good fella, right?
Right.
He's worthy. So people subconsciously make a note of to themselves when they see you in that respect, and they go, oh, obviously, if he's been able to sort of navigate the gatekeepers and the big fancy people in the big office buildings have decided he's worthy enough to be on their television shows, he must be of a certain value. But I have a TikTok that's gotten 150 million views. That's bigger than anything I will ever do. That touched more people than anything I will ever do, unless like I somehow figure out a way to get in a rock video,
Yeah,
so
right.
Inevitably there is that balance, and I'm interested to see where it takes us, where we land in 10 years, if there will be like no disparity between the two, or if, to your point, it'll always be one sort of is hand in hand with the other.
Yeah, I think there will be a reconciliation, as you suggest, just because of the way the content is merging. Even the traditional content is seen on streaming and on the network side of things. And the younger generation doesn't distinguish, like your son and mine, of what they're looking at. But the people with money still were born and raised on TV and movies.
Right.
So that credibility and value quantitatively, I think, in a marketing and branding aspect, still holds more weight, that you'll get more dollars from that 150 million view TikTok. No, you bring up another great point, these micro audiences. I've been a speaker for a long time. I've written 4 books, and it's funny how you lose perspective. Right. I used to dream about having 20,000 people in an arena listening to me speak, like Tony Robbins. Right. And as my brand has grown, I'll post a video and it'll get 40,000 views, and everyone on my team is disappointed. And I still see like the value in the micro audience. It's how engaging and connected you are. Yeah. So there's some people that can post a video and get 1 million views and it means nothing. And others can get 100,000 and it will mean everything, because they either have something else to give or there's a deeper connection. How do you feel about the new platforms? Because you didn't monetize the children's TV side of it.
Sure.
To be able to monetize an extraordinary reach with an extraordinary talent, have you thought about that vehicle where you now can monetize that audience that is specifically, Josh Peck TV?
Yeah, it's I basically think of it as whenever I get a brand deal for something on Instagram or TikTok, it's paying for the last 9 videos I made for free, right? So it's sustaining me to continue to create this content, which I love, and this idea that, it allows me to. Recently, I just did this show for Disney Plus called Turner and Hooch, and I spent 8 months in Vancouver with my son and my wife, and it was fabulous. And for a show like that, I'd do it 10 times over. But, the life of an actor is someone who has to travel that much and go to Atlanta or New Orleans or wherever the tax incentive is at its highest at the time and relocate their family and their whole life. And while I feel so lucky that if there was a project that really spoke to me, I could do that, I also know that I'm not completely at the mercy of the gatekeepers, that I don't have to uproot my whole family because I have this sort of other income stream. So, I embrace things like the brand deals and the social media stuff, because for me, I feel like, Marshall McCullough has this great quote, like the medium is the message. So basically, like if I'm creating for Instagram, it's no different than what I do for TV. I just make it specific to that platform.
Correct. You modify it towards that.
Yeah. Like what's going to resonate. And so I really try not to judge it. And I think to your point, I know plenty of people, like I have, a good amount of followers on Instagram, and I'm pretty sure half of them are inactive. Right. And I can easily look at someone with 1-2 million followers who's just like, the algorithm is firing at nonstop for them because their people are so engaged. Their followers are so behind them, that brand recognition, that awareness. And I think that is easily just as powerful as having a 10x multiple, but having, such a small percentage of active following.
And I think, moving forward as an actor, it's really interesting to be able to make the choice of being on a big movie, on a set, as people want to equally value their family. And it's the first time, I've dealt with actors and athletes most of my career in the representation side, to be able to bring deals that allow them to pursue what they want to pursue.
Yes.
And that freedom. For you, you're much healthier than you were.
Yes.
And, I want to finish up with your non-negotiable priorities, because we touched on health, we touched on family, we touched on activity you get paid for. Have you been able, in your mid-30s now, to ascertain a prioritization of your non-negotiables in life? You have a clear set so that when someone offers you an opportunity that may not align with the non-negotiables, do you quickly prioritize? Because I find a lot of athletes and celebrities, they haven't done the work to have their priorities or their non-negotiables, and therefore they end up drugs, alcohol, they end up overweight, they end up depressed, anxious, frustrated, or even, just broke because they haven't really worked through that. It seems to me that you've done some work to get clarity on your priorities and non-negotiables.
Yeah, to your point, I mean, family and health is sort of always first and foremost, and it's mental health. And, I'm a sober guy from drugs and alcohol, and doing what I need to sort of maintain just constant maintenance in that area, because I feel like you can't put the cart before the horse. You know, it's like when the oxygen masks drop on the plane, you have to put yours on before you can help anyone else. So I have to be conscious of that and making sure that I'm mentally and spiritually fit to be of service to my wife and my kid, and then inevitably my employer. And I'm basically just looking at, you know, my brother, I have a big brother from the Big Brothers Foundation since I was 8 years old.
Awesome.
He's awesome, the best. Shout out Dan. And Dan always says, like, the only thing we can't replenish in life is our time. You know, we can always make more money, we can always figure it out, but you'll never get more time. So now at 35, I look at an opportunity and I say, where am I being sort of rewarded for my time? Is it a financial reward? Because that can be valid sometimes. My kid's got to go to preschool, and my wife wouldn't, you know, has gotten used to heat and air conditioning.
Not everyone can go to PS40, right?
Yeah, exactly. Shout out PS40, my alma mater. So, you know, like sometimes that's reasonable because there's a financial incentive and it's worth time. And then other times it's worth my time because it is creatively stimulating. And I feel like I'm going to grow as a performer, and I feel like I'm going to learn something. At this point, like if I feel like I can't learn something or get a little bit more security for my family so they're comfortable, I'm really not interested.
One more lesson I'm sure Dan helped you through as you worked on the healthy side. And I tell people all the time, when you're healthy, you get as many wishes a day as you want. If you're unhealthy, you only have one wish.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy to see how you've maintained a really healthy lifestyle and have great perspectives and values, that there still are a lot of young people and now also 20 somethings and 30 somethings that still have that snapshot in their mind of you. And for you to be, you know, such a great role model to these 150 million that are viewing you, and a role model to all the new and old snapshots of Josh Peck, certainly is a privilege and also a value to our whole society, because we need more people out there, especially on social media, that have the same values that you do. So I just want to commend you for that and congratulate you on all the success you're having, as well as your future success.